Good evening and welcome to your City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 7th. I would ask the clerk to call into roll.
Councilmember Staley? Brecky? Here. Erickson?
Here.
Kiley?
Here.
Neitzert?
Here.
Selberg?
Here.
Sale?
Here.
Starr?
Here.
Thank you. As you know, we start our meetings with an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance after that. So today it's my honor to welcome Mr. Alan Green from the evangelist and founder of Life Light Communications. Welcome, and if you will all please rise for our invocation.
Welcome. It's good to be back in Sioux Falls. Beautiful evening. We could have had this meeting outside, but would you bow with me in prayer? God, our Heavenly Father, as we come to you tonight, we want to say thank you on behalf of those that are gathered here. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunities that it brings. We thank you for the many abundant blessings that we have here in our city. We thank you, Lord, for the ability to be involved in useful work that helps our city and our region. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to pray for governing authorities, since you've established them and promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for Mayor Paul tonight. I pray for the council members. I pray for Council Member Teresa Staley and for Janet Brecky and Christine Erickson, Rick Kiley and Greg Niesert, Marcel Selberg and Kurt Sale, Pat Starr, and again for this fine city at all levels of government. Lord, I ask that you grant them wisdom to make the right decisions for our community, decisions that would honor you, God. I ask that you grant them the ability to work in unity and harmony, even when there's areas of disagreement. I pray for personal peace in the lives of each person here and joy in their work. And Lord, we finally pray for the agenda that's set before us tonight and the opportunities that lie ahead. We also pray for our police and fire department, EMS workers, pray for their protection. We pray for our schools in this community that you would keep them safe. And Lord, in the words of Scripture, we seek the blessings of our city so that it may be a blessing to us in the book of Jeremiah. Lord, teach us to love like Jesus, to serve like Jesus, and to live like Jesus. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.
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 I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Well, welcome. Good evening, everybody. As you know, earlier this year, we formed a citizen recognition program. And in doing that, we did a lot of homework and consulting with some organizations and different clubs and trying to find the best way to do that and taking some tips and pointers and what worked best for folks. And the Helpline Center in particular was very helpful in this effort. And they've done a nice job working with us, giving us some support in that as we moved along. So what we wanted to do this month is take our citizen recognition time and highlight the Helpline Center and one of their recent award winners. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Susie Reeks, who will talk to or tell us about their award winner and tell us a little bit about the Helpline Center.
Thank you. So like you said, I'm Susie Reeks. I am the Volunteer Services Director for the Helpline Center. And the Helpline Center really serves as that volunteer center for the community. We help connect people that want to volunteer in the Sioux Falls area to nonprofits that need volunteers. And at any given time, there's over 600 different volunteer opportunities available out there. So if you have a passion or interest or think of something new that you want to do, there's probably a nonprofit that could use your help. Ways to find that, you can go out to our website, helplincenter.org, or you can call us at 211 and we can get you connected to those things. So besides helping refer people to nonprofits and getting them connected, we also appreciate volunteers. And one of the ways we do that is through our Spirit of Volunteerism Awards that we do each May. This year was our 36th annual event, and we honored over 80 different volunteers. These were all nominated by different nonprofits and individuals. And one of our winners we have here today was the Seroptimus Club. And Annalise is here with her husband and daughter, all that volunteer through a program that Seroptimus started, which is the Toy Lending Library. And that toy lending library really helps people, similar to a library does, giving out books that you can lend. They give out toys or lend toys to people in need for children 0 to 5, excuse me. And they have 9 locations throughout the Sioux Falls area. So if you're needing toys, the Seroptimus Club started this great organization that ended up turning into a nonprofit itself, and they have a lot of great volunteers that allow them to do this. So we are so appreciative of all of their work and are excited to be here tonight.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for all the Helpline Center does. Thank you for your support. And just a reminder to folks, again, if you have people that you'd like to recognize either through the Helpline Center or if you have somebody through the city, again, our award, Citizen Award Program, you go to siouxfalls.org, hit superhero, it's 250 words or less. But if you know people that are going above and beyond in this city, please reach out and tell us about them. Please volunteer with the Helpline Center and we'll keep on working at it. Thanks for all your efforts. Thanks.
We will move on to our consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda?
Madam Chair.
Councilor Starr.
Yes, I'd like to pull from the contracts item number 3 for the Parks and Rec Department.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there a motion to approve the remaining of the consent?
So moved. Second.
It's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Now on to our regular agenda. Is there a motion to approve the regular agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. We are now moving to our public input portion. I know that we recognize that Mayor Tanakin is not here today. He is on vacation. So I ask for a little grace and latitude tonight, as this is my first time chairing the regular meeting. Tonight is also our first night for the public input portion, changes that was passed unanimously by this council. And so I'd like to point out, with those changes, it provides 3 minutes of public input for all regular agenda items, meaning first and second readings. Additionally, the public input portion at the beginning of the meeting will last no more than 30 minutes because public input for all regular agenda items will be taken. You're asked to limit your general public input to topics not appearing later on the agenda. And at this time, I invite any other members that would like to address the council. Please keep your comments as a whole and not at individuals. And if there are additional people that would like to speak, please be prepared as we move through that. It is now 7:08, and we will conclude public input at 7:38. Go ahead, sir.
Robert Colby, excuse me, citizen Sioux Falls. 25 years ago, we had an oil spill up by Renner Corner. About 400,000 gallons of product came spewing out of the broken pipe. The state came on duty and they did their things. They started a civil action rather than a criminal action because the penalty for criminal action was a $1,000 fine, and they wanted to have a civil action that could do something for the citizenry. There were about 5 or 7 different organizations from Minnehaha Conservation District, Dirt and Water, AG's office, Minnehaha County, East Dakota Water Development, and I think the city of Sioux Falls was included in that. The estimate that initially came out was, as they normally do, was about 65 to 70% of what actually came out, and that's typical of all oil spills everywhere. The civil action was such that they wanted to achieve something for the community. We met, the EPA met with us, and they said, here's what will happen. The Williams Pipeline, who owned it at that time, they will come before you and they will try to take out the weak member of the herd and try to settle with them, and that'll kill your legal obligation or your legal action that you are taking. Well, Williams Pipeline tried to impress us with what they were, and they flew us down to Tulsa or Oklahoma City, and they did all kinds of whoop-de-fizz stuff, and they had more lawyers than there are in Sioux Falls. Anyhow, what they did was they did succeed. And why would we want? We went and we came up with an idea that we would do a pipe in the aquifer coming from the west side of the aquifer, west side of Sioux Falls, coming through to the east side, so that if there ever was a breach, the oil or gasoline or whatever would come out would go within the pipe, and it wouldn't contaminate the aquifer. Well, that was our plan. We should give you some background on the aquifer. The aquifer is an outwash of the glacier as the glacier receded from the Missouri River and receded all the way north back up into Canada and the Arctic Circle. The Missouri River is the front edge of that glacier. The Sioux River, the Vermilion, and the James River were those that were outwash. And it looks like you're going to have a second hearing of this, or I'm going to have special dispensation to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Colby, for your time. You're welcome to come back or stick around to the end of the meeting, and we'd be happy to engage you at that time.
To be continued.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Welcome, ma'am. Please state your name for the record.
Allison Bausma. I've lived in Sioux Falls for 14 years now, and I am a definite member of the downtown community. I was recently at an art show at Hydra Beer Hall downtown, and I think part of the problem that is presented is that there's a construction dumpster directly in front of the building, which is just, the company issue for that part. But what the bigger issue is that I really see a problem with is that there is barriers that actually block into the parking area, so that's causing people who choose not to take the detour, they're walking into traffic, actually. And the visual, if you can actually just step out right side of this building and look down about 1 block, you can see that what they're working on right now, instead of creating some sort of platform or, receding it a little bit, they're causing it to go into the street. And I've seen people walk against traffic, with traffic, people with strollers, and it definitely hurts people walking around that area trying to keep traffic flowing. I feel like it's a danger to the downtown community. I really would like to see not see anyone hurt. I feel like there should be hopefully very easy and appropriate action to be taken just to adjust that slightly, just because I feel like it's a danger towards the people walking down there. And when it was First Friday, downtown was full and it was heavily populated and it was great, but people either stopped and turned around or walked through traffic or crossed, it was just very dangerous. So I feel like if there was an appropriate measure to take to increase flow of pedestrian walkway through that area, as well as, in the future or in other instances, places like PAVE had those platforms and then drew a positive message towards it, like having a mural there showing what new businesses are going to be coming up, instead of just having big blockage and kind of torn apart buildings and stuff like that. So if there is a way for us to move forward, I'm not sure who to talk to. It's kind of a new thing since I just saw it just this last Friday. But I'd like to be able to find someone to talk to or work on something to pull that in a little bit, because they are taking up 8 parking spaces. And if we are looking at things like, Falls Park and the danger there, I'd rather not wait until someone gets hurt to start taking action.
Thank you, Allison.
you.
And we will grab your phone number, and I know that we'll be following up with you. Thank you. Wonderful. Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you for your input and appreciate you being here. Welcome, Bruce.
Bruce Danielson, Sioux Falls. It's nice to be back in the room again after spent a lot of money that really didn't need to be spent on a video system and audio system. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. And just wanted to let everybody at home, at least, if they get tired of watching Channel 16, you can go out to southdakota.com and watch the live stream that's being attempted right now to see how Scott Ersman and Patrick Lally and Matt Staub are doing on chatting. So I'll be up and talking some more tonight as things go on. So thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Welcome, Tim.
Tim Stanga. I want to thank Teresa for trying to bring up the people that we invested in with downtown. Teresa, it was a no-brainer on who was invested and who we got in bed with downtown on this development. And I think it should have been looked through a lot more thoroughly than it was. But when you have corruption, this is what happens when you get in bed with these kind of people. I took Pat with me on a ride-along in my neighborhood. We went on a 4-block radius. And I think Pat was shaking his head by the time we got done with 4 blocks on how my neighborhood has deteriorated within the last year. This city has let down neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood because we do not want to do anything in the older neighborhoods. Pat, I don't know if you can let these guys know what you've seen, but I'll tell you what, I shake my head every time I go in my neighborhood. And why do we have problems in the neighborhood? It's because the city doesn't do their job.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council?
My name is Jeff DeYoung. Family has East 10th Street storage over by Arrowhead Parkway. Construction is going fairly well. South side is nice and smooth now. The problem came in where the city had told us ahead of time that at all times either Detroit Avenue or Gordon Avenue was going to stay open. Come to work this morning, can't get in off the highway. Have to find a roundabout way to get in. Made a call to the engineering firm. I made a call to Josh with the city. Ended up going down to the Public Works building and talked to another Josh. And Josh Van Bosch told me that, well, they're putting gravel in there on Gordon. It should be done by noon. By 2 o'clock, they had started working on laying the gravel to it. One of the deals was we were promised that either Gordon or Detroit was going to stay open. How come it took till 2 o'clock today before they decided to do anything with Gordon? You know, I took the city at their word, and I guess it didn't do me any good to it, but I just hope it doesn't proceed any further. Listening to what I was told, it probably will when they come to pour, but it's not what the city promised in there. They told me that they can't have Detroit go straight out because there's a curb there. They can't put a curb wedge over it, blacktop wedge over it, because it drives into the lane of traffic in there. They didn't think of this stuff ahead of time. If the city's doing such a good job with the planning, or an engineer's doing such a good job with the plan, somehow or another, some of the stuff should have been thought of ahead of time in there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there anyone else that would like to address the City Council? Welcome, sir. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jerry LeClaire, and I'd like to discuss with you the traffic on West 26th Street between Marion Road and Saratoga. That's a 4-lane road. There's one stoplight at Valley View, and there are no turn lanes. And you have a very difficult time getting on and off the street. Plus, it's pretty risky to turn into that because by the time the traffic goes from the stoplight at Saratoga, they've caught up with the traffic ahead of them. So all the side streets along the route, there's no time to get in for the traffic trying to merge out of the neighborhoods. So I was wondering if someone would take the effort to send somebody out there to look at if there's a situation where you can put turn lanes in on a 4-lane street. Because when you look in your rear view mirror, sometimes you just wonder, are they going to stop or not? You don't know if they're on their cell phone or what. The second issue I'd like to bring up is that downtown development that Jeff Lamont has taken over. I really think the legacy development should be totally out of that picture. Their 10% should go to somebody else. One person died, a building collapsed, it could have caught on fire, they ruined another person's house. They're bad, they've come out of this as bad actors, and it smells. And they should set this development out. It should go to somebody else. You shouldn't give them a pass on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there anyone else that would like to address the City Council? Seeing none, we will move on to the next item, the item that was pulled from consent. Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to pull this for a couple of reasons. One, it started out, it's a $202,000 agreement for the Sioux Falls Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It's an opportunity for I got a copy of the contract today, had a chance to go through it, and I'm really impressed by the process. It's a strategic plan for our parks and where we're moving forward. I did a little more checking into it, and when you go back to the 2018 budget, it's not in the budget. And so what has happened is that they've been able to put funds together from their budget to bring this forward. What's interesting, and I enjoy creative financing as much as anyone. I've done it in the past with budget processes, but we're in this to pay for this master plan consulting project. We're asking that, or we're asking to approve using both capital money and operating money. And to my knowledge, in the checking that I've done in the limited time that I've had this, we've never done a consulting project with both capital money and operating money combined. It's a creative way of financing and then bringing this forward. I'm also, like I said, impressed that we're taking a look at what our parks are and how to move forward and having a master plan. But I really feel that there's a lot more explanation that needs to be done. I know Director Kearney's here tonight to do that for us, but I think in the interest of time and the meeting that we have of agenda, we really need to schedule this for an informational. And at some point, I don't know if Director Kearney wants to address us and go through some questions or how long, but I'm going to at least be looking to defer until we have a chance to go through an informational. Again, it's a new way of doing things. I don't necessarily object to it, but I think we need to have a little more time to at least digest how they're putting the money together, why it wasn't budgeted for, and why it's a priority now. And I think that would be a better use of our time to do that at an informational. So
thank you. Director Kearney, I know is here. Welcome you to address the questions that are on there.
Thank you, Councilor Erickson. Certainly, we don't have any problem with deferring it to an informational. It's not a time-sensitive project. Obviously, we'd love to see it move forward. It's an important process, as Councilor Starr has identified, but certainly we don't have a problem with deferring that. Just realize that I think we have some informationals coming up that are tied up with budget hearings, but we'd be glad to schedule it probably in September.
Okay, thank you. Do you have, what I will offer to the council is any specific questions that you'd like to have asked right now while we're here at this point? If there's anything anybody wants to ask? If not, we'll schedule it for an informational. We'll work with Tom and Jim to find a time and work with your schedule as well. I know we have budget hearings through the month of August, so we'll look early to mid-September when we can rearrange that and fit that in. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I guess from a parliamentary procedure process, because it was an agenda item, do we need to have an official motion
Yes.
to defer? So
Yes.
I don't have the calendar in front of me. Pick the second date in September, and second Tuesday in September is?
September 11th.
September 11th. Let's do the 11th. I would move to defer this item till September 11th.
There's been a motion and a second to defer this item till September 11, 2018, with the intent of doing an informational. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. We are on to the next, now on to our regular agenda.
Okay, item 26 is a transfer of a 2018 retail wine license from NV Nails and Spa LLC, NV Nails and Spa, 4521 East 26th Street, to Jada Lee Lux Nails and Spa, 4521 East 26th Street. Item 27 is a transfer of 2018-19 retail malt beverage license from Mali Abuku Eric Fatigu, 1122 North Weber Avenue, to Eric Fatugo LLC, Eric Fatugu, 1122 North Weber Avenue, pending final inspections per health. Item 28 is a special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for downtown Sioux Falls to be operated at 417 South 2nd Avenue, Northwest parking lot at the corner of 13th Street and 2nd Avenue, for an outdoor movie on August 30th, 2018. Item 29 is a special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine license for downtown Sioux Falls to be operated at the State Theater, 316 South Phillips Avenue, for a fundraiser on October 12th, 2018. Item 30 is a special one-day liquor license for K&P Enterprises, the Nickel Spot, to be operated in the parking lot on 2918 South Minnesota Avenue for a special event on August 18th, 2018.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing. Item 26 and 27 are transfer requests due to change of ownership. Items 28, 29, and 30 are all special one-day requests that have met the state law requirements. On item 29, I would like to request a motion to withdraw per the applicant's request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Is there any discussion or motions? Councilors?
I'd make a motion to withdraw item 29.
Second.
There's been a motion to withdraw item 29 and a second. Roll call vote on that.
Councilmember Staley?
She's gone.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert? Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That item is passed, has been withdrawn by a vote of 7-0. Any other discussion on the following items? Or motions?
Motion to approve items 26 to 28 and 30.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 31.
Item 31 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 1240 and 1246 East 21st Street from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District number 8743, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Good evening. Jason Bieber representing Planning and Building Services. This is an application and the owner is Kenneth Rear. It's located at 1240 and 1246 East 21st Street, just east of South Cliff Avenue. It's roughly 0.19 acres in size. Lot 11 is 0.11, and then lot 12 would be 0.08. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing one single-family house at 1240, and then another single-family house at 1246. Each of these lots are less than the 50 feet wide, therefore that we have to rezone to that RT1 zoning district.
Thank you, Jason. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, council, any questions or motions?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been a motion to approve item 31 and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That item is passed 8-0. Item 32.
Item 32 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 7201 South Cliff Avenue from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood Streetcar District to the C3 Commercial Community District, petition number 8731, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0 with the following condition: maximum building size of 35,000 square feet.
The applicant and owner here is Joel Engel with Lemming Companies. It's located north of East 85th Street and west of South Cliff Avenue. It's roughly 3.1 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing roughly 32,000 square foot indoor gymnastics facility on the property. Staff is requesting the condition to be placed as Tamara read, limiting the size, maximum size of this building to 35,000 square feet. With this condition, then staff does feel that the request generally does meet the criteria of the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, council, questions or motions? Councilor Nitzert.
I'll make a motion to approve with the following condition: a maximum building size of 35,000 square feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for item 32 with the condition. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That motion is passed 8-0. Item 33.
Item 33 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located west of North Marion Road and south of West 54th Street, north from the RA2 apartment residential moderate density district to the RS single family residential suburban and RD1 twin home duplex residential suburban districts, number 8720, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant and owner here is Steve Van Buskirk. It's located west of North Marion Road and south of West 54th Street North. It's roughly 7.76 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing additional single family and twin home lots up here.
Thank you, Jason. This is second reading. Anyone from the public want to speak to this item? Seeing none, council, questions or motions?
Move to approve. Second.
There's been a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 34.
Item 34 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located north of East 69th Street and west of South Greystone Avenue from the CN Conservation District to the REC Recreation District, number 8691, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant and owner here is Lloyd Companies. It's 0.45 acres in size. It's located north of East 69th Street and west of South Greystone Avenue. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing a picnic area and then a small dog park for the residents of the existing apartments and townhomes within the area.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public want to address this item? Seeing none, questions and or motions?
Move to approve. Second.
There's been a motion to approve in a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 35.
Item 35 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at the northwest corner of South Highland Avenue and East Arrowhead Parkway from the MH Manufactured Residential Housing and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts to the CN Conservation District number 8690, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant and owner here is the city of Sioux Falls. It's located northwest corner of East Arrowhead Parkway and South Highline Avenue. It's roughly 4.24 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is to match the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is a city-owned detention pond and drainage area.
Thank you, Jason. This is the second reading. Anyone from the public like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, council questions and/or motions?
Move approval.
Second. It's been a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 36.
Item 36 is a second reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at the southeast corner of East Broken Arrow Street and North Bonson Avenue from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the CN Conservation District, number 8689, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant and owner is also the city of Sioux Falls. It's located east of North Bonson Avenue and south of East Broken Arrow Street. It's roughly 9.55 acres in size. This is a similar request to the one we just heard. We're just looking at matching the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is a city detention and drainage area.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public like to address the council? Seeing none, council questions and/or motions?
Move to approve. Second.
There's been a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That motion is passed 8-0. Item 37.
Item 37 is a second reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at the northwest corner of South Westport Avenue and West 10th Street from the C3 Commercial Community District to the CN Conservation District, number 8687, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant and owner is also the city of Sioux Falls. It's located northwest of the old Kmart site. This one is 4.60 acres in size. Similar to the other ones, we're just looking to match the correct zoning with the current detention pond use of the property.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public like to address the council? Seeing none, council?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been a motion to approve and second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. And item 38.
Item 38 is the second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at the southwest corner of East 41st Street and South Southeastern Avenue from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the CN Conservation District, number 8686, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant and owner is also the city of Sioux Falls. This one is located west of South Southeastern Avenue and south of East 41st Street. It's just under 6 acres in size, and like the previous ones, we're matching the correct zoning with the current detention pond use of the property.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public like to address the council? Seeing none, council, questions or motions?
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That motion is passed 8-0. Item 39.
Item 39 is a second reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at the southeast corner of East 6th Street and North Cleveland Avenue from the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density District to the CN Conservation District, number 8685, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
This is our final detention pond of the night. It's owned by the city of Sioux Falls. It's located at the southeast corner of East 6th Street and South Cleveland Avenue. It's just about 10.5 acres in size. Similar to the other ones, we're just matching the correct zoning with the current detention pond use of the property.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public like to address the council? Seeing none, council actions or questions?
Move to approve. Second.
It's been a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That item is passed 8-0. Item 40.
Item 40 is a second reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 401 South Joliet Avenue from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District to the S1 General Institutional District, number 8684, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant here is Eric Wildson. The owner is Marvin Tripp. This one is located north of East Arrowhead Parkway and west of South Foss Avenue. It's about 1.5 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at combining this parcel with the one he recently rezoned to the north. Then they're looking at constructing a roughly 25,000 square foot indoor recreation facility with a climbing wall, a parking lot, and then some volleyball courts.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public like to address the council? Seeing none, council questions or actions?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I guess I
Councilor.
did have a question, whether for the applicant or Jason, you might know, with the volleyball courts, do they plan on adding lighting so you could, in the evening?
Looks like I don't think the applicant is here. I do not know if they're looking at adding lighting. If they did, it would have to meet all the criteria of our zoning ordinance with downcast and things like that. So.
Thank you.
Counselor?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been a motion to approve and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 41.
Item 41 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at the southeast corner of South Louise Avenue and West 95th Street from the AG Agricultural District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District, number 8749, 2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0.
The applicant here is Ron Nelson. The owner is Roshan Plucker. It's located at the southeast corner of South Louise Avenue and West 95th Street. It's a property that was just recently annexed into the City of Sioux Falls. It's about 18.35 acres. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing a future church, place of worship on the west portion of this property.
Thank you, Jason. Are there any comments from the public? Welcome.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
Lori Hersrud. And I guess my question is the same thing. We have land adjacent to this. Same thing, 20 acres plus or minus. So, and I called in and I asked, my questions were, did you notify South Dakota 100 people? Because that lays right there as well. So we already have 200-foot right-of-way of ours going to South Dakota 100. So we've owned the land 30-some years. My questions are lighting, liability. If you do put a church there, I have no problems with a church, but when the city annexes in, they don't notify the property next to. They're not required to notify us. So even during the annex, it's just a given. We don't even have any say. It's beyond the 95th corridor. It lays south of where the city has got their line. It's actually having this type of rezoning because it can't handle, it's this type of rezoning because it won't take commercial. The city sewer, the city water, it can't handle it. We're on a downslope starting at this property that they've annexed to take a new lift station. And we've always been told that. So we're in Lincoln. This is Minnehaha, but they annexed in Lincoln beyond the line of where the homes are, which are up to like 93rd. This is like 95th, if I got it correctly. But my questions are, what does that put on us for liability? Do they require a fence? Because the South Dakota 100 is taking ours down the line. They don't notify South Dakota 100, so they're not part of it. So I didn't want to take it upon myself to call South Dakota 100 because I'm just a citizen. But when doesn't the city work with the state? Because this is all a big city thing, this South Dakota 100. We're talking a 55, which It's not going to be a 55. I travel Russell. It's supposed to look like Russell, South Dakota 100. They don't go 55. You're going to have this church next to Russell, which is a 6-lane with medians. So there again, where's the safety? You got children. I know kids are not. They're outside in the churches all the time, in the parking lots. This would butt up right up against South Dakota 100. But my concerns are lighting, same thing. We're ag. We've had ag for years. We've got animals out there. You know, am I going to get a 6-foot fence? I don't want trespassing. I don't want liability. I get churches are great, but you still have a huge volume of people. So those are my concerns. My concerns are that they can annex without letting people know. They don't work with the state. I just have a lot of concerns that Mrs. Plucker's had this land on the market for years. And this sale's going through because of the possibility of this church building.
Thank you.
So that's my concern. You got one possible future church, but you got it annexed in, and I'm sitting there next to it with nothing but risk. And there's a waterway. I don't want to see some child. It's a constant waterway with water in it.
Thank you, Lori.
Yep.
Jason, we'll follow up in a minute. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the council on this? Otherwise, I turn it over to the council. Counselor.
I would request Jason Bieber to come up and
could I ask a
address
question?
some of those concerns, please.
Could I ask a question? Now, does Jason get 3 minutes too, as well as the citizen? They spoke 3 minutes. Does he get a 3-minute rebuttal then?
It is not a rebuttal. We're asking him to answer questions.
Jason gets whatever amount of time is required to answer the question.
Thank you. Jason, thank you. Can you answer those questions that were brought forward?
With checking with the annexation, we do send out letters, and we did send out letters to the adjacent property owners. I checked with one of our other planners, Albert Schmidt, and he did send a letter to the property owner to the south, so they were notified. Some of the lighting is we have those standards within the zoning ordinance. We have outdoor lighting standards, requirements to not trespass light onto other properties, so we already have those built in. Fencing, that's kind of would be the idea of the church. They would have to provide additional fencing. I don't believe that South Dakota 100 has acquired the right-of-way in this area either yet, so I'm not sure what they've worked on with them on this other. The applicant may be able to give you a little bit more insight onto those questions.
Councilor Kiley.
Can you talk about, is there a required in a situation like this where it's not developed, is there any kind of requirement for a buffer?
There would be to the north, because those are single-family houses. To ag land, there isn't a requirement of a buffer within the zoning ordinance. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilors, are there any other questions? Are there any motions?
Move to approve.
Second, Neitzer.
It's been a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion?
Oh, I'm just going to say, for the record, I think on these second readings, she was almost done, but when we're talking about people's homes, their businesses, their personal lives, and she couldn't have spoken to us on the first reading, but I think saying you have 3 minutes to speak, I think we're going to need to look at that, because they certainly deserve to be able to present their case. So I just want to say that formally.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Recky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That item is passed 8-0. Item 42.
Item 42 is a first reading to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 14, 2018 at 7:00 p.m. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 30, City Council, Subchapter Organization and Procedure, Section 30.013, Order of Business.
Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you. I started working on this before we changed administrations, and I had a nice conversation with the mayor's office today, and I think we might be able to address the goal that I'm looking to accomplish in another way. And I'd like to defer this to have that conversation, and I appreciate the reach out. So I'm going to move to defer this until the first meeting of September. So I'll move to defer to September 4th.
Second, Staley.
There's been a motion to defer item 42 to September 4th. This is a first reading, so I do need to offer public input for this item, even though that there has been a motion. We do offer public input on every first reading, so you have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Bruce Danielson. I've had a problem with the construction manager at risk process from the get-go, from the event center on. I have found problems with each one of the buildings that have been built under this guaranteed maximum price, construction manager at risk, all the different variations. This one I have a problem with on one thing. I want to see this move forward, but I want to see all change orders be listed, not just 25,000. If the 25,000 had been the limit for releasing, I still would have had a problem, and I still would have created the problem that we ended up having in publicizing the fact that the siding warranty and the issues with the siding were done as a zero value change order. So that would have never been presented to this body or to the citizens of Sioux Falls. All change orders on these buildings need to be put into effect. If this is going to be useful at all for anything, and then it could be publicized on a website, just flat out put it on the website and draw it out. Don't make it just for this council in a consent agenda or something like that. I think it needs to be on the consent agenda, but it also needs to be publicized that these are change orders for these different buildings so that the public has a chance, and then you'll keep people like me probably a little bit more quiet because I like looking at these things and I like researching them and I keep finding the problems. So thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Anyone else like to address this item? If not, we have a motion to defer this to September 4th and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 43.
Item 43 is a first reading to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 21st, 2018 at 7:00 p.m. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by adding Chapter 161 to be entitled Sioux Falls Downtown Rail Yard Environmental Overlay District.
Good evening, Dustin Powers with the Planning Department. Tonight we have two items in front of you related to the rail yard redevelopment area. Item 43 addresses an environmental overlay district that would be placed over the entire rail yard redevelopment area. And item 44 would be looking at the first proposed development of the rail yard redevelopment area, the 4 acres for Black Iron LLC, Rail Yard LLC. And so we'll address both of those separately, starting with item 43. The Sioux Falls Downtown Environmental Overlay District was a requirement of the Federal Highway Administration. It applies to the property that we purchased with the rail yard redevelopment funds. And it provides an ongoing environmental controls for any redevelopment that happens within the rail yard redevelopment area and looks at and to avoid any future environmental or health concerns as part of the redevelopment. It provides a coordinated review between the city and the South Dakota Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. It requires that an environmental engineer do a complete environmental assessment of the redevelopment areas as they occur. And it also requires that if cleanup is required by the DNR, it must be taken, it must happen prior to the redevelopment happening. If regulatory substances are found, but cleanup is not required. So in a case of where maybe the soil's not going to be disturbed, so let's say a surface parking lot or something, they may not require that cleanup to happen right away. But if redevelopment were to occur and that surface parking lot were to turn into something else that would disturb more of the soil, a review would have to occur again, and that assessment would have to take place again. And it may be required at that time that cleanup would happen. So again, the scope of this chapter just augments our existing criteria for city review and permitting. and it requires coordination with the South Dakota DENR as part of this process. So if there's any questions on this, we could answer those at this time. Again, this is a first reading, setting the date of hearing for August 21st.
Thank you, Dustin. Anyone from the public like to address the council on this item?
I'm not trying to come up here on every one of these, but Bruce Danielson, one of the things when the railroad redevelopment project was all put together, there were a lot of questions that we had about the reversionary rights of all this property. And we were promised in this room that we would be seeing the all of the deed work done since territorial days that involves this property, to know that people still have their reversionary rights or not. And I've not seen anything. I've not seen any meetings about it. It's as if this property just magically became available, and the railroads that came through Sioux Falls all came to Sioux Falls with reversionary rights. In other words, the neighboring property automatically owns this land, and it's very likely that Burlington Northern never had the ability to sell this land in the first place. And so we have to go back and do some research, and with the laws involving rails to trails, et cetera, the more research I'm doing on this, the more problems I'm seeing with ownership of this kind of land. And I'd like to have a full explanation of this valuable land. I would love to see the Billions be able to put this building up and do the work that they're doing, but I'd also like to know that they're getting this land without any reversionary rights still attached. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this item? Turn it over to the council. Questions and or actions?
Madam Chair,
Councilor
I wouldn't mind hearing from Dustin if he's got an answer to that question, or if one of the attorneys that are here as part of this, maybe Diane's a better person to talk about reversionary rights and explain what Mr. Danielson was talking about.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Diane Best with the City Attorney's Office. I can address that item. The South Dakota Department of Transportation required title research previous to purchase of the rail yard property, and that research was completed. The titles to the property, Mr. Danielson's correct that if titles to the property stem from the General Railroad Right-of-Way Act of 1875 or other specific congressional grant, that those titles may require, upon abandonment of the railroad, that property go back to the abutting landowners, and that there's a recent decision of the United States Supreme Court in 2014 that addressed that issue. However, the titles of the property involved in this situation were all government patents for the property that were issued to private individuals in fee simple, and they were not government railroad grants directly. So these private individuals obtained the property in fee simple, and they later conveyed strips of various widths and lengths to railroads by virtue of quitclaim or warranty deeds. Although the language in the deeds vary, each grants title to the property and meets the standards for the purposes of the DOT requirement that the city obtain title that would not contain the right, or that would not involve that right that would go back to abutting landowners. Are there further questions?
Any other questions, Councilor?
No, thank you. I'm sorry.
Any other questions from the council? Any motions?
Move to approve. Second.
It's been a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote, please.
We're setting a date of hearing is the motion.
Sorry. Thank you.
City Councilmember Staley? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That item has passed 8-0. Next item, please.
Item 44 is first reading to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota declaring certain real property of the city surplus and approving offer to purchase.
Welcome, Dustin.
Dustin again with the Planning Office. Tonight we do have Jim Wiederick and Dave Billion representing the Black Iron Rail Yard LLC as part of the redevelopment that we'll be talking about. So I will bring Jim up to say a few words here at the end of my presentation. This was a presentation that we gave about 3 weeks ago at an informational, and so I'll highlight a number of the items again and be able to answer any questions at that time. In the fall of 2017, the city did do an appraisal on this 4.05 acres, or actually we did an appraisal on 4.84 acres of the property south of 8th Street. And in that appraisal, there was a cost appraised value of $3,165,000. So I'm going to kind of scroll back and forth between the exhibits here. So when we had the appraisal done, we did the appraisal for the 3 parcels labeled A, B, and C, and that was totaling the 4.84 acres for the rail yard property in discussion. During the negotiations and the discussions with the development team, there was a want and a need for access, an access road, and then building of a bike path through the development site. It was determined that the city would retain ownership of the land that was going to be maintaining that roadway and the bike path. And so ultimately the agreement in front of you tonight is for a lesser acreage than what was in the appraisal. It is for 4.05 acres. But using the same calculations that were in the appraisal of value per square foot, we ultimately end up with a total land value of $2,614,795. And so in the offer to purchase that you'll see in front of you tonight and going forward, it'll be for the 4.05 acres and for the $2,614,795. So now we'll move on to some of the details of the development agreement. As you can see on the screen, this is a large development between 8th Street and the viaducts at 10th Street, just east of the 8th and Railroad Center, the existing Railroad Center, and just west of the remaining Burlington Northern Santa Fe rail lines. Within the development agreement, there are a number of items called site preparations that needed to occur, and those have been separated out for this presentation between the developer's responsibilities and the city's responsibilities. The developer, as I just stated, we are going to be retaining a portion of the property, so the developer will be responsible for platting the property to illustrate and divide the properties as detailed in the agreement. The developer will be responsible at its expense to build the bike path that'll be maintained by the city going forward and on city property. And then the developer will need to enter into a private roadway easement with the city for that city retained property. And then within that easement, the developer will build at its expense the private roadway or access road. The city's responsibilities as part of the agreement is relocation of a Sprint fiber optic line and CenturyLink utilities. The CenturyLink utilities have already been relocated into 8th Street as we went through and relocated or removed the tracks. And the Sprint line is still to be completed yet this summer. The removal and disposal of approximately 6 inches of topsoil. This was a requirement of the Federal Highway Administration as some of the requirements for the use of their funds. And so if you've been out there recently, you've noticed that the tracks have been removed and that top 6 inches of soil have already been removed. We will build and own and maintain a fence along the city's property. So this would be the eastern most property or edge of the property where the city would be retaining ownership adjacent to the Burlington Northern Santa Fe property. And this was a requirement of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe as part of the purchase agreement with them. And that is a project that we will be looking at completing yet this fall. Installation of a historic marker. This was a requirement of the Federal Highway Administration as well as SHPO. And so this is we've identified a location on that parcel A, so along A Street, where we will enter into a historic access easement with the property owner or Black Iron Rail Yard LLC, and we will place that historic marker there. And that's a requirement, again, of the Federal Highway Administration and SHPO. And then once the developer builds the bike path on city property, then the city will own and maintain and repair that bike path going forward. So the development is kind of separated into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. And within the agreement, there are requirements that relate to the timing and then what that development entails. And so the phase 1 development is required to start construction June 1 of 2019 and complete construction by December 31st of 2020. If the developer fails to meet that timeline or the requirements that will go through here as part of the phase 1 requirements, the city does have the option to repurchase the property. And if we were to repurchase that property, we would be repurchasing it for 85% of what we sold it to Black Iron Rail Yard LLC. This rendering shows what the building that's a part of phase 1 of the rail yard redevelopment. And this rendering is a visual looking at the back of that building as well as the courtyard improvements that are a part of phase 1. And then on the right hand of the screen, you can see the access road as well as the bike path. So some of the minimum requirements that are associated with the phase 1 development within the development agreement. That first building needs to be a minimum of 6 stories, a mixed commercial and residential building with a total square footage of at least 100,000 square feet with at least 30,000 dedicated to commercial space. The developer will also complete the private roadway that has been discussed as well as the bike path located on city property and then the completion of the courtyard improvements as well. And the developer's construction schedule for those improvements with the underground parking starting yet this year if the development agreements get approved. Phase 1 of the development would start in the spring of 2019 with completion in the fall of 2020. So again, just to illustrate a little bit from this site plan view, phase 1 building is right here. This would be A Street on the right hand of the screen. The courtyard improvements would be in the center, and then the access road and the bike path would be along the eastern edge. And so those would be the phase 1 improvements that we just discussed. Next, I'll talk about the phase 2 improvements as they relate to the development agreement. Within the development agreement and the phase 2 improvements, we have set a date of June 1st of 2030 for substantial completion of these improvements. There were a number of factors that necessitated the completion date be extended out to that date. Those are that there are multiple buildings associated with phase 2, and that ultimately taking time to evaluate the market conditions after phase 1 improvements are completed, and looking at other development that's happened downtown, doing design work, and ultimately construction will see a longer time period. And so with the magnitude of this development and this project, that we did necessitate a timeline that would be further out. If the developer doesn't meet if the developer meets the phase 1 commitments but is unable to meet the phase 2 commitments within the development agreement, the city does have some protection, and the developer would have to pay liquidated damages as set forth within the development agreement. Again, here's a rendering of the phase 2 development. Phase 1 development is approximated at $32 million. So that would include the first building, the courtyard, and the access road and bike path. And then these two buildings here associated with Phase 2 are estimated anywhere from $40 to $50 million at this time. So we wanted to look at the economic impact or the financial benefits associated with this project. Obviously, there's a purchase price of $2,614,795. These funds were as a result of using federal highway dollars to purchase this property. Any of the funds we receive from future sales of this property will go to dedicated eligible highway projects, federal highway projects in the city of Sioux Falls. The Phase 1 development of $32 million will see an increase of property tax revenue as well as an increase in sales tax revenue due to the retail portion of the project. The Phase 2 development of $40 to $50 million will see increased property tax revenue from that. And then at this time, no other city assistance has been requested from the developer. Following the July 17th informational meeting, there were some questions related to what the value of this land would be, and then also what the value of or the estimated taxes associated with the Phase 1 development would look like. And so we did reach out to the Minnehaha County Equalization Department to determine what that would look like. Ultimately, looking at what the estimated assessed land valuation would be after the sale of the property, it was estimated that the value of the land or the assessed value of the land would be at $7 to $8 a square foot, just based on what they have seen in the East Bank area to date. And so with that, the property would be assessed at $1.2 to $1.4 million based on the square footage in which we're selling to the developer as part of the development and a purchase agreement. One of the other questions was related to the Phase 1 development being $32 million. What does that equate to in property taxes being collected? What we did is we sat down and we kind of looked at what are some similar properties on the East Bank area. And we identified two properties that are made with similar materials, similar building style, similar land area, and looked at those and what they were generating for taxes. And so when you look at the Sharapa building, which is at 300 North Sharapa Place, that property is valued a little over $17 million and collects $321,000 annually in taxes. We also looked at the Lumber Exchange building, also houses the CNA Surety along Reed Street. So that again is another property that is a mixed use building, mainly with commercial, but does have structured parking associated with that. The property is valued a little over $19 million and pays north of $350,000 in taxes annually. So where are we at today? We have been to the informational on July 17th. Tonight we're looking at the first readings of these ordinances. If passed tonight, we would move on to second readings on August 21st with the effective date of September 14th and a potential closing date of October 1st. So at this time concludes my presentation, but I did want to invite Jim Wiederick up to say a few words on behalf of the developer.
Good evening, council members. I'm Jim Wiederick with Woods, Fuller, Schultz, and Smith, and representing the developer here tonight, as well as the owners involved, which are David and Erica Billion. They have been working in parallel with what's been going on as far as the city process is concerned regarding the purchase of the property. So to date, they've been able to select the architect, which is Architecture Incorporated. They have now selected an owner's representative who is familiar to the city of Sioux Falls in Tegra out of Minneapolis. And they have interviewed contractors, and within the next couple of weeks we'll be making a final decision on contractors, assuming that this process continues forward. They're excited to get going. There's lots of work to be done, lots of numbers to be crunched, financing to be put in place, but they are really excited to be able to tie this in with the other properties that they have on the East Bank. We're here tonight to answer any questions. We think that the agreements are fair to both the City of Sioux Falls and to the developer. A lot of time and energy has been put into those negotiations, and we are here to look for your support for a second reading.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to address the council on this particular item? If not, I'll turn it over to the council for questions. Stay close in case there's questions for Dustin or Jim or anyone, or motions. Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you.
Or Starr, sorry. Go ahead,
That's
Councilor
okay.
Starr.
Mr. Wiederick, if you don't mind, I have just a quick question, if I could. One of the questions that I had been asked by a constituent was asking about whether the developer would be asking for the discretionary formula for the property taxes moving forward, or if that was part of it, because we talked that there wasn't any other requests of the city, but would that be a request that would be possible through the county?
It is likely that the developer will request the discretionary tax abatement program, but at this point, there is no plans for a TIF.
Perfect. That answers. Thank you.
Councilor Neitzer.
I guess my question was, as I was listening to this presentation, it just occurred to me, we're doing a private roadway with an easement versus, I guess, dedicating a right-of-way. What would be is the benefit of that then the private developer is responsible to do all the maintenance of the road? Is that what the driving factor was with that particular decision?
Yeah, a little bit of it is that there would be the responsibility of the developer to maintain that going forward. Also with this development and the size of the roadway won't necessarily meet the entire engineering design standards as required width for public right-of-way in downtown. And so by narrowing that also is some of the reason that it will be called a private roadway and be maintained by the private developer.
I thought maybe design standards was driving it too. Now, as far as the bike path, will that completely be on city property?
Yes.
Okay, so they're just building it for us and.
Yeah, so they're building it for us. They'll need to build it to standards as we have with our other parts of our bike trail. And so they'll need to work with the city on what that looks like. And ultimately, but it will be on city property and then maintained by the city going forward.
Yeah, that was my next question. We'll have free and unfettered access to it and we'll maintain it and can do whatever we need to going forward?
Correct.
Okay. It's going to tie into the main bike trail to the south and up to, I guess, Falls Park eventually as it builds out. But.
Yeah, as we build out with the future phases of the development or rail yard redevelopment to the north, and then ultimately there will be a needed connection to the south to where the main bike trail is.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. Dustin, you may have mentioned this during your presentation. If you did, forgive me for asking this question, but the economic impact was calculated over what period of time?
What portion of the economic impact are you referring to?
Well, you were going over phase 1, phase 2 economic impact. Phase 1 development, 32 million.
So the 32 million is actually what the project is going to cost. And so we didn't calculate actually what the impact would be. We just listed it out as we will see an economic impact from increased property tax and increased sales tax. And then on the next slide, we did talk about what we could potentially see in increase of taxes going forward. So we didn't calculate it over a year or a multiple year span.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Staley.
I have 3 questions. Number 1, and I know you stated this when we had our informational, but just for people who didn't hear that and to refresh our information in our minds, tell us why we have different discrepancy in the prices and the value of these different parcels.
Yeah, so there were 3 parcels that are in the offer to purchase. And let me get back to that slide here.
One was 13 and one was 15.
Yeah, so we have 3 parcels, A, B, and C. A was appraised at a little bit lesser value of $13 a square foot versus $15 a square foot as B and C were appraised at. And the reason for that were the number of encumbrances that were on the property and the way that we acquired the property from the Burlington Northern via quiet title. Ultimately, there's some some items that are on that property that will require us to quit claim it to the developer, and ultimately that was a result of the lower value of the property.
Second thing, you mentioned removing 6 inches of topsoil. Is that because that was contaminated? Is that why we agreed to do that for them?
It wasn't, as they had reviewed the soil conditions of the property, that was just a requirement of the federal highway, and some of that was a result of what was associated with those top 6 inches of soil.
So where would that soil have been taken?
I believe it went to the landfill. Yeah,
So
it went to the city.
can we
landfill.
just take contaminated soil and dump it at the landfill? Is that?
It depends on the type of contamination, and so with the level of contamination and the condition of the soil, it was able to be accepted at our city landfill.
And then the last thing, I was wondering what the fence is going to look like. We talk a lot about fences and buffer zones. Is it going to be black iron by any chance?
I'll have Josh come up and answer that question.
Good evening, Josh Peterson with the Engineering Division of Public Works. Yeah, it's not going to be a wrought iron fence, but it's going to be a black steel fence. The best example that I could point to downtown is the remodeled Ace Hardware that's downtown on 2nd Avenue. They've got a black fence that is along their property there. We're putting up a very similar fence to that.
Well, how high is that?
A 6-foot fence.
And the railroad is mandating that way so people don't wander over into their property, or what?
Yeah, it's a security feature there, since they are going to maintain their operations on the remaining rail lines that are there, and the redevelopment is going to be, going to have more pedestrians, and we just don't want anybody to wander into an active rail site by accident and get hurt. So we wanted to divide that line to make sure nobody wanders in there inadvertently. But we also wanted to make sure we're putting up an aesthetically pleasing fence, something that is going to match the downtown aesthetic and historic nature.
Then who's going to maintain that fence?
That'll be the city's responsibility. That'll be on our property adjacent to the bike trail.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Starr.
Yes, and I'm not sure if Dustin, you're the right person, or someone else, and maybe Attorney Best can help me with this as well, but I just need a clarification what a discretionary abatement formula is versus a TIF. And does the city actually approve that, or is that a county process? How does that work in the development process?
So we do have the tax abatement program, or the discretionary tax abatement program, is through the city of Sioux Falls. Applications are received, and there are requirements set within our ordinance. So for the downtown area, any property or any development that raises the property valuation by $50,000 or more essentially qualifies. And so the only property or only use that doesn't qualify is single-family housing. And so any commercial development in the downtown area, because there are different, we do have an industrial program that has different criteria, and we have a neighborhood program that has different criteria. But ultimately, it's a program that we take applications for, but it is implemented through the county through a reduced taxation, and it's a 5-year program where they would receive that abatement formula for that 5-year period.
Is that also affects the school district as well then in that process?
Yes.
I mean, it does all of the property taxes, just like the 3 entities would be.
It's not the same as a TIF. It reduces the property value, and so essentially, instead of where a TIF there is an increase in assessment, and then we collect that and then distribute it. The abatement program actually reduces the actual assessed value, so then those taxes just never are really collected.
So is that totally decision-making process is on the city as part of that, not the other 2 entities, whether it's the school or the the county?
Yeah, ultimately, the applications do come through the city. We review them via our city ordinance on the discretionary formula, and then we work with the county to implement the program.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Staley.
Just one more, leave this slide up. I just wanted to make a comment for the public watching this, because I thought it was so neat that they're going to, because I don't think most of the people are aware that you can do this, but if you look on this, the middle area of this with that grassy area and those cars parked up there, my understanding is they're going to have their parking cavern underneath there, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
underneath
there's going to be
the,
all that parking under there.
Yes, underneath the courtyard area is where the proposed underground parking would be.
And how many people will be able to park down there?
I don't recall the exact number.
To be determined, about 300.
About 300 underground parking stalls is what would be. That's what's proposed.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, motions?
Move to approve.
Second, Brecky.
It's been a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 45.
Item 45 is a first reading to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 28, 2018 at 5:00 p.m. at the Joint City Council Minnehaha County Commission meeting. An ordinance amending the 2002 revised joint zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County and the City of Sioux Falls by rezoning property at the west 350 feet of the south 400 feet of the north 1,378 feet of the east 560 feet, Lot 1, Olson's Addition, west 1/2, northeast 1/4, Section 10, T101 North, R50 West, Wayne Township, Minnehaha County, from the A1 Agricultural District to the Emerald Pines Plan Development District. The Minnehaha County Planning Commission recommends approval 7-0. The Sioux Falls Planning Commission recommend approval 4-1.
The applicant and owner here is Myron Olson. This is located at 7701 West Maple Street. It's about 3/4 of a mile west of McGovern Middle School. As Tamara indicated, it is located within our joint jurisdiction area of the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County. It's roughly 3.21 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking to construct a roughly 8,000 square foot wedding barn facility with roughly 225 seats, and then they're proposing about 186 parking spaces. The City of Sioux Falls planning staff does have some concerns about the proposed rezoning because it is located within a future residential area as defined by the 2040 Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan. Staff does generally like to have these type of commercial developments, wedding barns and things, located at the intersection of two arterial streets.
Thank you, Jason. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, council, any questions, comments, or motions? Councilor Nitzert.
Can you bring up the map again? I just want to. So, since this is not really developed, what would be the access, and in the future, what would you envision? Would it be there'd be some sort of a local street or a collector going southbound, and that's how they would get in there, and it'd be kind of in.
Well, I would say the future of this, with it being future residential, there's possibly a collector within this area. Not positive on how it would develop. They're just showing a paved kind of access driveway to get from Maple Street into their proposed development barn, or wedding barn, excuse me. There is a neighborhood employment center located to the east at the intersection of La Mesa and Maple Street. Those are two arterials. That's typically where we would like to see commercial uses of this type more onto those intersections.
So your vision is this would be like in the middle of a residential subdivision, for example?
Yeah, somewhat. It'd probably be a little bit more, single family or maybe some more multifamily, just because you're going to be adjacent to an arterial street, but we don't foresee commercial at this specific location.
And I don't recall, does the county make a recommendation, or do they just, the county as in Scott Anderson and his department, and what was their recommendation if they make one?
The county makes a recommendation, and also the city did in this case. The county's was, I believe, for approval. The city recommended, and I'll just for those concerns that I specifically laid out. So,
okay, thanks.
And the motion, if there is a motion, it would be to set this second reading for Tuesday, August 28th for the joint city-county, Minnehaha County meeting.
So moved, Nitzert.
Second, Staley.
So in a motion to approve and second for the joint meeting that we'll have on August 28th. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Recky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 46.
Item 46 is deferred from the City Council meeting of Tuesday, July 17th, 2018. A resolution declaring certain real property of the city surplus and authorizing the listing thereof.
Welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Good evening. I'm Mike Cooper, representing Planning and Development Service tonight. When this was introduced at the last council meeting, I went through a real brief overview of the Huey building, and I'll just repeat that tonight so that anybody that wasn't listening before has an idea of what we're talking about. So this graphic shows the block between 8th and 9th Street on the east side of Phillips Avenue going over to the Big Sioux River. The Huey building, which is in the middle of this block, goes back to the late 1970s as part of an urban renewal project. It was constructed for a mixed use of first floor office and then 44 units of affordable housing. The affordable housing qualified through a HUD Section 8 program, which meant that it was open to people that had income qualifications. The current owner of that building is now interested in selling the property. The Section 8 qualifications will end in January of next year. And so the owner has been working with the existing tenants starting actually last December to help them relocate to other Section 8 qualified rental units within the city of Sioux Falls. The owner has been working through the HUD process and also has been reaching out to other landlords that own Section 8 qualified property to help with the relocation efforts. And I believe right now there's roughly 20 of those units left to be relocated of the 44. So this came about to city staff because there's interest by another local group of potentially purchasing the Huey building and redeveloping it. And so as part of that discussion, the area that's shown in yellow is the area that we're considering tonight as part of our council action. This is a parcel of land that's 35 feet in width, 110 feet length from north to south, and actually it extends from the ground up 12 and a half feet. And that was set aside back as part of the urban renewal project, and then later on there was a permanent easement placed on this property for access to the Huey property as well as property to the north. And then the property to the south is also utilizing a portion of this as access to dumpsters. So the interest in this yellow box is, has multiple property owners looking at this. And when we presented this on the 17th, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not does the city council even have the legal authority to declare this surplus. So that was the first question that was raised by some of the adjoining property owners. And because we didn't have time to do a more comprehensive presentation, we decided to defer this till tonight. And as I'm done with my overview, the next speaker will be Danny Brown from the City Attorney's Office to go through the legalities, at least from the staff's viewpoint, of whether it meets the test of being able to declare it surplus and going forward. So there's three things that I want to make sure that we all understand with this proposal tonight. First of all, City Council action to go forward with this resolution does not and would not change any existing easements on this property that's shown in yellow. Those are perpetual easements, and any future redevelopment or change in ownership would have to honor those easements. Number two, by allowing this resolution to go forward, it does not approve or even endorse any specific redevelopment of the Huey building or the area that's shown in yellow. That has to come later on. And also to clarify that by allowing this resolution to go forward, it does not approve the sale of any of this property shown in yellow. But what it would allow is that it would allow the next step by ordinance, which is to allow the real estate office to advertise the potential sale of this property shown in yellow. And that advertisement has to go through a process of a minimum of 2 weeks of advertising. And then the third step would be that any proposals that are received would ultimately have to come back to you, the City Council, for approval. So any portion of that area shown in yellow, before it could be sold or before it could be redeveloped, would have to come back to the City Council for final approval. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands this is a multi-step process. Declaring the process surplus only is the first of 3 steps by city ordinance. There's been a lot of comments since this was introduced in July from various property owners, and I know there's a number of people here tonight that would like to address the council, both in favor of going forward with the resolution and those that would like to at least defer it for further consideration. Why is this important for us to even consider? I think, first of all, we know that the current property owner wants to sell the Huey building. And so the concern is what's going to potentially happen to this multi-story property that's in kind of the heart of downtown. And what action can we as a city and you as the City Council look to help maximize all potential redevelopment options of this property? We want to make sure that we are leaving everything out in the open to get the best final solution for what happens to the future. But at the same time, obviously, we want to ensure that what happens is going to be compatible with this area of downtown. So there's a lot of things on the table as far as you, the City Council, taking into consideration how you want to go forward with this. But from my perspective, and based on some of the discussions that we've been having with various interested parties, it seems like the real cloud on this is whether or not the council has the desire to actually declare it surplus. And I think until that question gets addressed, it's going to limit some of the ability to really look at what the final development potential could be, not only for the people that are specifically interested in the Huey building, but also the adjoining property owners to the north and to the south. So it's kind of like, do you declare that you're interested in surplusing it with the intent to maybe help that move along serious discussions about what will happen to those next steps before something is brought back to you as the council? Or do you defer it with the idea that it would give more time to have those discussions before you decide whether or not you're actually going to make it surplus? So it's kind of a two-way option that you have to hopefully decide on tonight. But I can tell you from my experience of this kind of a situation and dealing with some other land use items over the years, it seems like unless there's really an indication that you're going to approve the surplus resolution, I think it really could limit the ability of us to seriously have those discussions with the property owners. whether it's the Huey building or the other interested property owners. But that's all that I can say as far as any guidance for you tonight. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Danny Brown to again reinforce to you why we believe at the staff level that, first of all, you do, as a council, have the legal authority to declare the property surplus. So Danny, you're next. And I will be around for further questions.
Thank you, Director. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you. Danny Brown, Assistant City Attorney. First off, you do have the authority to determine that this property is surplus. State law is pretty clear on what that process is. So provided that we follow the notice requirements which we've had up to this point, this body can determine, if it would like to, that the property is no longer necessary, useful, or suitable for the purpose for which it was acquired. As Mike said, it was acquired years ago for redevelopment and clearance under the Urban Renewal Plan. It's actually platted an alley access easement, and there's actual easements that have been recorded against it. The thing that should be noteworthy is this particular property, it's not like park property where you have to get special permission to sell it. There's no conditions against it on the record where we got it as a gift and it has to be used a certain way. So there's no deed restriction or contractual restrictions that I'm aware of or that I could find. So this body does have the ability to determine this property as surplus. It's a private easement. It's not public. If you look at the plat, it makes no reference to this particular area being public, and therefore you can infer that it's private. It's not platted with the alley. It's separate, so you can make the inference that it's private, not public. And on the plat itself, there's no words like it's a public access or it's dedicated to the public. These are all things that support the position that it's private easement and it's land that is owned by the city, not unlike a lot of the land that we own, that from time to time we decide we want to change its use and do something else with it. It doesn't have to meet all three of those conditions, necessary, useful, or suitable, or no longer necessary, useful, or suitable. It can be any one of those things. And so long as your decision is based on reason and is justified by the evidence that you've heard today or hear later, your decision should withstand any challenge, if ever, in the future. I agree with the process that our Director Cooper outlined. This is the surplus stage. This is not authorization to sell. It just is a trigger to start the process. I can answer any legal questions if you have at this time. I think Mike covered a lot of things that I was going to talk about. If not, I can just let the next people speak.
Why don't you stand by for questions? I know there will be plenty for you. If there are no other presenters at this time, we'll open it up for public input. It is deferred from there. We will allow additional public input. If there's anyone here, please come forward, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to discuss. We'll then ask questions and potentially even pull up additional people for additional questions for that.
Point of order.
Sure.
Why are we limiting the public input to 3 minutes on regular agenda items?
That's what the ordinance says.
No, the ordinance doesn't say that.
No, I'll defer to our
I
city
would
attorney.
ask the city attorney. The ordinance says, notwithstanding A, the public input portion at the start of the city council meeting. All of the conditions that we passed this ordinance that are limited to were specifically restricted to the public input portion. There was no discussion about regular agenda items.
I'll defer to.
And I'm asking her the question.
Thank you, councilors. The ordinance that you adopted last month, 30015, does state in sub A that the public input shall be allowed for any item on the regular agenda. The only restriction was set forth in subsection B, stating that the public input portion at the beginning of the meeting shall not be more than 30 minutes, but any time public input is offered on the regular agenda, subsection D applies, stating that it would be limited to 3 minutes per person.
So that's was D changed as a part of this ordinance?
Changed it from 3 to 5. From 5 to 3, I should say.
But in the past, were you limiting it to 5?
Yeah, it was
public-
5 minutes.
the
and it was
regular
only on the
agenda
second.
items?
Excuse me, I didn't mean to talk over you.
The regular agenda items were limited to 5 minutes before?
It was 5 minutes on second reading, but this ordinance opens up public input now on first and second reading. And it was always limited to 5 at the second reading on regular agenda items, yes.
Okay, but we can extend that if we, individual council members can extend that?
It has to be granted by a majority of the city council to extend the time.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to the city council for questions and or statements, motions.
No, I think.
Councilor Stale. Go ahead.
Chair Erickson, I'd make a motion to defer item 46 to Tuesday, September 4th.
There's been a motion to defer the item to Tuesday, September 4th. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yes, thank you, Councilor. I just, at this time, with everything swirling around with this issue, with the interested parties, I just don't think that there's been enough time. This thing started in mid-July. For some people, it started in mid-July. For me, it started then. I'd like to see this thing another 30 days extended to give the interested parties time to come together on a consensus that they could live with. I don't see the rush and have to have an overnight with this. The transfer of the building is scheduled probably for the first of the year. So I would like to give 30 more days so this thing could be discussed and maybe there could be some resolution brought that's not so contentious.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there any more comments? Councilor Neitzer.
Well,
Or
one
questions?
thing I would note as well, people were slow to get up, but I think they were trying to get up to give input, but I don't know what we want to do about that. But I would be curious from, I guess, probably the proposed purchaser, whether or not they have contracts in place that have expiration dates, and whether, you know, I don't know when that date is, if a decision has to be made and this is contingent, or...
Councilor, you're welcome to.
Would it be appropriate to ask a representative of Green Acres? Could they...
At any time, you can ask a question and have someone come forward if that's what you choose.
Yeah, I'd like to, if somebody from Green Acres, is there anything time sensitive as far as...
Welcome, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Josh Apperson, Greenacre Companies. Yes, that contract goes currently till January 15th of 2019.
It does?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Councilor Kiley had a question.
Well, if the representative could come forward, please. Again, please.
Josh.
Josh. If deferred, what impact does that have on your contract agreement? A delay of 30 days?
Certainly, any delay at this point is significant. You know, we've heard dates get thrown around of this having just been heard about for a short period of time, but the current building owner is under time restrictions with the amount of time that he currently has left with that contract that I know also expires in January. So he would be running under difficulty, and certainly to be able to get something put together on the opposite side would also be running under difficulty. Any days that get extended is a difficult process for both parties.
Thank you. And one other, you know, this isn't a question for you, Josh. Thank you very much.
Sure.
One concern I have about the delay is I believe unless we answer the question whether this is surplus property or not, I'm not sure if it's giving the parties involved a lot of direction as to how they're going to move. I think they're waiting for us to make a decision on whether this is surplus property or not. And I'm just throw that out as a point of discussion and would welcome your feedback.
Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move to amend the September date and change it to August 21st.
Is there a second? It dies for lack of second. Councilor Staley.
Well, And I guess if we don't defer it, then I think we need to open this back up, because I think some people did want us to speak to this, and then we need to hear all the testimony.
Sure.
So I don't know if can we do that after we vote on the deferral?
I would refer to our city attorney.
I think you could. We could go back to a main motion and then open it up for public input and discussion.
Councilor Neitzer.
Yeah, I would certainly concur with Councilor Staley's wish. I don't think we can take action without getting people up here that wanted to come up. But my concern is that I understand the spirit of the deferral idea, but I don't know why multiple parties would come to the table unless they had some compelling reason to do so. And at this point, as an example, if I'm one of the adjoining property owners and I have unfettered access, I don't know why I would go to the table to negotiate away some of the access that I have now. So I think they do need probably some direction one way or another, or some reason in which to sit down and talk. I mean, if we just punt it and we don't say anything, I don't know what forces anybody to the table, frankly. So,
Councilor Selber.
Thank you. Director Cooper, could I ask you a quick question? Did I understand you correctly to say that your thoughts are that if we do defer it, that we're hindering the process?
Yeah, my opinion would be that I think, as Councilor Kiley said, the real question hanging before us is whether or not you're willing to declare it surplus. That's why I was trying to emphasize that that does not commit us to doing anything with easements or with endorsing a redevelopment. It just starts the process. And maybe at the end of the day, there's a decision not to sell any of it. But until you decide that, yes, you're willing to declare it surplus, I think that really limits our ability to have those serious discussions with all the interested property owners. That's my opinion.
Okay, because I can obviously understand where Councilor Sales coming from to a point, but if what we're doing is hindering it, then...
Because I think the big debate so far is that, does the city council have the legal authority to even start this? And that's why Danny Brown was asked to provide you with at least the staff's opinion that you do have the legal authority to pass this resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And we're going to open up public input. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on public input? If so, please make your way to the podium or stand or know that you want to speak. Thank you. And state your name for the record.
My apologies for the confusion earlier and the delay in standing up.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Moore. I'm a partner with the Cutler Law Firm, which is a tenant of the current Equity Square building, which is also owned by Riverview Square. I don't disagree that the primary question before this council is whether you do in fact have the legal authority to declare this property as surplus. However, I would phrase that question differently. What is the scope of that legal authority that is conferred upon you by state statute, or conversely, what limitations are ultimately placed upon you by that state statute? And when we look at the guiding law of South Dakota as articulated by our South Dakota Supreme Court, you are required to give effect to the plain meaning of the statute, which in this particular case is SDCL 6-13-1. And what that statute specifically says is that a political subdivision may sell, trade, destroy, or otherwise dispose of any land, structures, supplies, equipment, or other property which the governing board has by appropriate motion determined is no longer necessary, useful, or suitable for the purpose for which it was acquired. And when you look at the particular documents dating back as far as 1976, and again in 1985, what that shows you is this land was dedicated for purposes of ingress and egress to the various buildings on this particular property. That use has been consistent for more than 40 years and continues today. So when you look at the particular statute that ultimately places those limitations on the city's authority, the question becomes, can you say that none of necessary, useful, or suitable still need to be met? It's not just one of those. In order to surplus that property, you need to conclude that none of those three critical words still describe this property. And for those that benefit from this particular alley, that again, we've relied on for more than 40 years in our access to this particular property, any one of those still applies. So when we talk about an easement might not change in the future, or they might still have access, that's not the inquiry, because we're looking here ultimately at a transfer of title to this particular property, and it is still used, and it is the only way to access the building in which my firm currently occupies, as well as the other tenants in that building, because there is no access from 8th Street, there is no access from Phillips Avenue, and ultimately that's still used today, not only by those who are residing in our building, but also by emergency services that may need to access this particular property. Excuse me.
Madam Chair, I would like to allow this person 2 more minutes to speak.
Go ahead.
Does it require a second?
Does it require council? Because
We had this happen with the mayor a few weeks ago, and he allowed it to.
I understand it's a new ordinance, and I want to make sure that we're following Robert's rules, and so I'm asking our city attorney to weigh in to ensure that I'm following what we're supposed to follow.
I think you can make that decision yourself, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And if the council wants to overrule you, they can do that separately if they don't agree with your decision.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you very much. So this particular alley has been used not only for those to access our building, but also emergency services to the extent that they need to access the parcels at issue, as well as deliveries. And with what we're contemplating doing at this point in time, I don't believe there's anyone who can say that this property isn't used multiple times on a daily basis for that ultimate purpose for which it was intended. It's very true if you go to the case law of South Dakota that you're not going to find any cases from our South Dakota Supreme Court telling you you can't do this. You're also not going to find anything telling you that you specifically can do this. And that's because you again need to be guided by that plain meaning of the statute, and you need to say in order to surplus this property that it is no longer necessary for accessing those parcels. It is no longer useful for the purpose for which it was intended, which again was ingress and egress, and it's no longer suitable for those exact needs. It's every single one of those 3 terms in order to declare it surplus. And for that reason, while this might be a multi-step process, you absolutely have to answer that question first. And there are specific limitations placed upon this council by those boards, and we do not believe that you can in fact, declare this particular property as surplus. I appreciate your time, and I know many of you came out to the building, if not all of you came out, and we certainly appreciate the time that you have given to analyzing these issues and the opportunity that you've given to all of us to speak. And before I forget, one last thing. Heritage Bank, which is also a tenant of the Riverview Square building, contacted my firm this afternoon and authorized us to also indicate that they have concerns with regard to the surplusing of this property and do in fact oppose it. They are not opposed to redeveloping the Huey building, nor do I think most people would be. It would be a wonderful opportunity, but this particular issue simply can't go forward, and so I'm authorized to say that on behalf of Heritage Bank as well this evening. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council? Welcome, sir. Please state. Oh, welcome, ma'am. Sorry. Nope, you're fine. Come on up.
I'm sorry. Again, I apologize for the confusion earlier. Maybe we should have drawn straws or something. I'm Carrie Miller. I am a shareholder at Woods Fuller, and I represent Kelly Phillips Ventures Partnership. And I shouldn't need my whole 3 minutes because I've communicated with you by email. I just want to revisit those points briefly. And maybe we'll go in reverse order. Something that came up today. I want to make it clear to you that my client, an adjoining property owner that has an interest in the real property, an easement is an interest in the real property, was not contacted about the potential surplusing of the property. But if you think about the requirements of the statute, that you have to indicate that it is no longer useful, necessary, and boy, I'm not going to do or suitable for the purpose, who could tell you that better than the adjoining property owners? So my client has concerns about the process and the communication, and I think we indicated that in the email earlier. And then my client has concerns about its easement, which seemed to the clients to have been forgotten in this process. And the most recent communication is that the easement, which allows us to build a trash enclosure, and the trash enclosure has been shown on all the development plans and approved as part of the permitting process, and allows us ingress and egress access to that trash enclosure. That easement area is going to be walled off. Again, there seems to be some failures of communication here. But then when we think about that, we think about, well, we're using the property and we're going to use it. That easement has existed since 1978 when this property was acquired for redevelopment purposes to provide ingress and egress and to provide public services and to facilitate the collection of garbage and to facilitate the access of emergency services to the property, to the adjoining properties. And so if we think about the fact that we're concerned about our easement, it indicates that we are, in fact, using the property. We also would note that there is no through alley, and this was acquired for public services as well, and that area allows the better access of emergency services. Sorry, I promise not to use the whole time.
Please do not apologize.
I'll make a motion. I'd make a motion to let you continue.
I think that hit my high points.
Well, actually, I'd like to do it this way. I'd like to make a motion to waive the time limitations for this discussion.
Second.
Because I think that this, I'll give the basis for my motion. That's why I had the inquiry at the beginning, because I could see that there's a lot of people here who want to talk. This is absolutely our opportunity. This is what we're here for, is to engage the public at, during the input portion of the items that are on the agenda. And we're briefed by staff, and we can hear them anytime we want to call, but this is the only time that we have. So I would really like in this discussion to just waive it, and I got a second, so I hope we can bring that to a vote.
And if I may say, also, in discussion here, that we're hearing from people, when we say you can only speak for 3 minutes, you are limiting our ability to make a decision. We're not getting all of the information that we need. This isn't fair to the constituents, to our community, to do it this way. So I second this. I think we need to hear from these people. Give them 5 minutes.
And I would remind everyone that it did pass unanimously from the council, and so this is not my decision, but a decision of the council. And so, Councilor Kiley, I know you had your hand up.
I just have a question, and I certainly understand where the councilors are coming from.
Yes.
And stating that, is this motion appropriate? Because it seems to be unrelated to the agenda item. It's related and it's very important, but I'd just like to have an opinion of our attorney. And I've got some other comments after, regardless.
Well, as to back up, I think what we have right now. Sorry about that, I didn't have my microphone on. Just to back up, what I have down is that we still have a motion to defer to September 4th is still being decided. And we've opened it up to public input to talk about that at this time. And so I would advise to keep clean order that we stick to that motion before we make another motion on public input.
Can I point of order and ask, as the chair, am I allowed to just blanket that and if no one objects, then it moves on and we allow that? I apologize, this is new ordinance and we're just trying to make sure that we follow the spirit.
Right, and I appreciate that as well. And so I think rather than have another motion, if it would be acceptable to the counselor that made the motion and the one that seconded it to do a point of order and allow Madam Chair to go ahead with that waiver. And if there's no further objection, then we can proceed forward without muddying, having two motions on the table.
Councilor Brecky.
And if I can continue, because that's what I was going to suggest, that we just simply continue to make a point of order at least to extend as necessary until we get to the point where we can decide on the motion that's on the table.
Is that your point of order? So Point of order and do it.
It's not needed right now, not until.
So are you making I heard you saying you were just going to, for the rest of the discussion, we're just going to allow, we're not going to have to do each.
We need a point of order and a request, and then the
Point of
chair.
order, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor
There's
Sale.
been two motions considered here. The second one is valid without the first one being attended to. I would like to have the chair waive the time limit, even though it was unanimously approved by this council, waive the time limit for the purpose of this discussion.
Thank you, Councilor, and I will adhere to your point of order. If there's anyone else that would like to speak, please come forward. State your name for the record.
Patrick Glover. I am attorney with Meyer Henry Sargent and am here on behalf of Green Acre Companies. For the purpose of this discussion today for surplusing, I think we need to go back and look at the history again of this property and what it was purchased for. It was purchased for redevelopment. Very clear, very simply, that's what it was bought for. This 35 feet behind the Huey building was left in city ownership. I can't find in the history of this council where it ever discusses why it kept it and why it only kept 12.5 feet above it. But it did keep it. If you look at the plat, it is for ingress and egress for the Huey building and the building to the north. And in 1978, the city did give an easement for 12 feet for the property owners to the south. And then in 85, there was an ordinance passed. It was ordinance number 192, July 15th of 85, and it was recorded. This is what shows up as the easement for lots 2 and 3, which would be the Huey building, lot 3. Lot 2 is the property to the north for ingress and egress. Now, this ingress and egress is a private right for lots 3 and lots 2 across the city's property. This is not a public right. The city council doesn't go and buy land to allow ingress and egress for private individuals across private land. The selling or surplusing of this property at this point today does nothing to that ingress or egress rights. It still remains, it will remain, it has to remain. The only way that it can go away is for there to be the same owner of that 35 feet and the 2 lots that are there, and the lot to the south for the enclosure for the garbage. So those easements stay there. The rights that these property owners are here saying that they are concerned about will not go away. In fact, this is not something that the city wants to be a part of. If in the future, and I'm not saying there is, but in the future, if there is an issue with this property and the development of it and these easements, the city, that's not a fight that they're in or need to be in. So the question is, 1, what was the property purchased for? Very clear it was for development. That property has been developed years ago. 2, what is a public purpose that this 35 feet can have? Is it going to be a park someday? No. Is it going to be a building put on there? No. Is it needed for access for these other property owners that are up here discussing it? And with all due respect to them, no, it is not needed. That is what the easement is for, and it will remain that way. So if there ever was a property that the city owns that meets the definition of or the requirements for being surplus, I can't think of a better one than this one. Like I said, it will never serve the public good. It serves a private good for the 2 other lot owners, and that will continue. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Is there anyone else here?
I do have one question,
Sure.
sir. Yes. You said that this property was purchased for development?
Yes.
Was it? Can you find in your research that it was exclusively for development of the Huey building, or was it for development?
Back in 1975, there was a resolution passed, number 15-76, I believe, dated March 3rd, 1975. In that resolution, it says the city of Sioux Falls is offering this land for sale to attract new private development beneficial to the orderly growth of the community and expansion of its tax base. It is intended that this land be developed within a reasonable period of time following the sale of the land. And it's referring to lots 2, 3, 4, 5, and lot 1, block 7 of downtown. Now, this one is not block 7, it's block 5, but it's also called Downtown Center Urban Renewal Area. So I believe from that resolution that it was the intention of these, not only these lots in this resolution I just talked about, but the ones that used to be lots 1 through 8 of J.L. Phillips Edition, which are now lots 1 through 4, Block 5, Downtown Center Urban Renewal Area, that was the intention, was the city was purchasing it, replatted it, and then offered it for sale with conditions that it be developed upon to help with the tax base and the growth of the downtown area.
So not, in your statement there, I did not catch anywhere that it was exclusively for development of the Huey building.
I think it was exclusively for development of that area.
So am I safe to assume that since there has been 2 easements granted to adjoining properties, that it has been used for development?
I think also that the building was built on it, that it has been developed, yes.
Okay. I have a question for Director Cooper, if I could. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'll get to that later.
Stand close by, you'll be up again. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council? Welcome, sir.
John Quaintance for Riverview Square LLC. I wouldn't want anyone to think, in light of the many emails that I've sent to you folks, that we were abandoning any of the arguments that were made at that point. So I want to thank Ms. Miller and Ms. Moore for appearing here and for articulating the concerns as well as they did. I also want to remind you that Mayor Noby provided some information. It was in the form of an attachment to one of the emails that I sent you. He commented on the purpose. I think this goes to Mr. Glover's wonderment as to why that odd 35 by 110 piece was set aside. His statement to me clearly was it was simply to let people turn around down there. It was really to augment or to expand the alley. Now, nothing about the characterization of that property is a model of clarity. There's no question about it. If you look at the easement, at the plat, it says easement for alley. Is it an easement? Is it an alley? Is it both? Probably both. I don't think that they're necessarily, I don't think at least that the easement terminology is preclusive of it being an alley. I think it's an alley. I think that, frankly, this resolution is a bit of a charade for a purpose that's been pretty straightforwardly put forth by Mr. Cooper, and I applaud the work those people do, but this is a manufactured proposition, and it's not fair to the people who have relied on the existence of that property all these years. The city doesn't get a mulligan in this development. The city's already cashed that chip. It already cashed that chip when it created this plat, and it identified that area as excuse me, being available for access. I did look at the City Planning Commission approval on this plat, and that led to a little blurb in their minutes of December 15, 1976. And it says, Mr. Metley explained that the purpose of the plat was to allow accesses, and he recommended approval of it. Mr. Mulhare made a motion to approve. The motion was seconded by Mr. Enns and unanimously approved by the City Planning Commission. I think that sheds some light on it. Whether you call it an easement, as the proponents of this resolution, of course, would prefer to do, because that sort of feeds into this narrative that they can, we're not losing anything, or whether you call it an alley, as I choose to call it, which I don't believe you can vacate without our permission, is perhaps somewhat beside the point. The fact is, this is contrived, and it's just not right, and the city shouldn't be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council? Council, I will turn it over to you for your questions. Councilor Sale.
I have a question for Director Cooper. Does the city normally hold surplus property? Or when something is declared surplus, is it the intent to get rid of it, sell it, disband it, whatever?
Typically, yes. The reason to declare it surplus would be to dispose of it, yes.
So, I don't know if you're the one to answer this, but if it's declared surplus and we choose not to do anything with it at a later date, what are the ramifications of that for all of our, we just declared a whole bunch of land surplus and sold it to the billions. What happens if we declare this surplus then choose not to do anything with it, how does that affect what we do going forward, and how does that affect that property?
And I'll let Danny Brown maybe give you a legal opinion, but I would say that I would equate it to your advertises for bids for a project. You don't like any of the bids, and so you reject them all, and you don't go forward with the project. That's kind of how I would equate this. We declare it surplus, we advertise the proposals that we get, potentially we don't like any of them, and so nothing happens to the property. But maybe Danny Brown would give you a different legal analysis of what would happen in that situation.
Danny Brown here. No, I don't have a different opinion. If you surplus the property and you ultimately don't authorize a sale, it's still our property. It's still being used for whatever purpose it's being used. It was just surplus by resolution. It changes nothing about the property. I don't think anything potentially negative could happen to us by determining that surplus and not going through with the sale. Except for maybe one thing. You surplus it property, you call it surplus property, you don't sell it, and 4 years down the road, somebody comes in and they make an offer on it, and you have to decide, did we surplus this 4 years ago, or should we surplus it again? And maybe you have that discussion and say, just to be safe, let's just surplus it again since so much time has passed. Or you surplus the property, you get some offers you don't like, you turn them all down, administration comes back and says, you know, we passed this resolution surplusing this property, it didn't work out, let's just repeal that resolution, right? No harm done. So surplusing the property, in my mind, does nothing negative.
Councillor Staley.
I've got a question for maybe Mr. Cooper can answer this. How many alleyways do we have in the downtown area that are butted up into a dead end?
That, I believe, is pretty unique to this one because it goes underneath the 8th Street Bridge, but it narrows down to a less than 20-foot width. So I think this might be potentially the only situation like this within the downtown.
So
we could sure verify that.
If this moved through and the development plan I saw did bring us a wall out to the alleyway with doors in that garage-like doors that they could go through for the access of getting into their building and or the garbage area. So that means that moving in and moving out, there's going to be you're going to have to back all the way out. Somebody going in there to do something to get out of there, they're going to have to back out. Correct?
Well, again,
if you're not going into those access.
I think if I could be so bold as to say, I think we're kind of making some assumptions of what may or may not happen based on a concept plan. And so again, I'm trying to emphasize tonight that you're not being asked to support, endorse, reject any potential plan that's been out there, but you will have a chance to look at that in great detail if and when we would get to that point. So,
but we are the surplus, and you've had that up for the whole time that this has been presented. That I've never seen a document up so long on the screen, if I may say. That is saying to us that we're going to be saying that that area hasn't been useful for any other purpose. And I am saying that having that open like that, I think probably has been a benefit to people who are trying to turn around and get out of there.
So that's part of your decision. If you feel it can be declared surplus, that's what you're being asked to decide on as a council. And again, that's why I'm saying it kind of muddies the water until we know what that decision is going to be from my perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Neitzer.
Yeah, so I want to tell you kind of my frame of reference is that, you know, on the Board of Adjustment, which I served for 5 years, I had to make legal decisions, and I certainly could make any decision I wanted, but obviously that didn't mean it was legal, and obviously it could be appealed and overturned. And since we're quasi-judicial, and I was in court, I think 3 times on appeals of decisions, so I always took my responsibility seriously, and this is another one where I'm trying to parse the law and I'm trying to do the right thing. And for me, I guess what I've been concerned about is, am I being asked to look at the shiny object and then work backwards to justify declaring a property surplus in that regard?
Madam Chair, point of order. We have a motion on the floor to defer, and comments should be directed towards that motion first. If we're going to debate the full, whether we move forward declaring the surplus or not, that's a secondary issue at this point.
I will make a substitute motion to approve this ordinance.
Could you repeat that, Counselor?
I'm making a substitute motion to approve, this resolution, not ordinance.
And I second that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. There's a new motion on the table to approve this item, I believe for discussion purposes, and so go ahead, Counselor.
I may continue?
You may continue.
Okay, thank you. So my second concern was that I'm concerned that we're knowingly, if we do this, we're knowingly going to create litigation. And I mean in two senses, and I don't normally do things out of fear, but I think we're asking for a lawsuit against us, and even maybe more importantly, we're inviting litigation between multiple private parties. I don't see how we get around that, and that's a big deal to me as well. A concern also is that the easement just doesn't seem to define what access is, and I think a court is going to have to determine what access is. So, we declare the surplus, and and we're just, there's still the easement, and we can feel okay about that. I think the land gets sold, and now we get a couple, 2 or 3 parties fighting over what is access. Is it garage door access? Is it unfettered space access? We don't know. So really, to the core question, and the only question I guess for tonight, is the property surplus? It seems like to me the property was obtained as part of a larger parcel, and there are documents that seem to indicate that it was not just for urban renewal, but it also uses the word access, and I think we held that back, and I think the easement was really to kind of perfect essentially what I think we had it for, and we chopped off that piece in the first place. So it seems like it was for access. So really what it comes down to is I have to make a determination if the property is still necessary or suitable for the purpose for which it was required. I guess to me it seems like it plainly is. I guess I haven't heard a compelling argument, I guess, from the city, who technically is the applicant here, because it's a city asking to declare the property surplus, besides the fact that, well, don't worry about it, there's other steps down the line. But again, I think it's one of those things where you just have to focus, for me, what does the law say, and the plain and unambiguous language says what it says, and I have to decide, is this no longer suitable or useful? And I have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to get there, and I think I have to kind of listen to my gut on this one. So I have a serious problem with this. So I'll stop there.
Could I have Attorney Danny Brown come up, and specifically if you could address Ms. Moore's statements about necessary, useful, suitable, and then I think we had one other too that we could address afterwards.
Well, with respect, I disagree with her opinion as far as what has to be there in order to find its surplus. It doesn't have to be all three. There's an or in there, which means it can be all three, 2 of them, or 1 of them. Quite frankly, this body has the ability to determine that whatever it was being used for in the past, that use is now changed and it's no longer suitable for that. So even though it was access, we're going to change the use and do something else with it. We surplus property all the time that has some use or it's still suitable. We surplus motor vehicles that we still drive around and do work with. They're still necessary, suitable, and useful, but we surplus them because they've, they're too expensive to maintain, or maybe we don't need 10 cars anymore. So we have the ability to surplus property. The question is whether or not you want to do it or not. You can definitely change your use if you'd like to. So I don't think you have to meet all those requirements. You have great latitude, and you have the ability to surplus this if you like. The change of ownership of this property doesn't take away the rights that they have. So you could say, if you wanted to, and I feel confident in saying this, it's suitable for surplus because it's no longer necessary for the city to own it. because we have perpetual easements placed on this property where these folks aren't going to lose any rights or interests that they currently have. They'll just have to address those rights or interests with a different owner. Now, you may decide, well, this was an access from day one, and we don't want to change it because they're using it now, and we don't want it to go down the road where there might be litigation and we might get pulled in, and you might determine to rule against it. That's your discretion. That's your broad latitude.
Thank you very much. And then Director Cooper. Do we have any utilities of any sort or any infrastructure under this property?
There are easements, yes, that would also be retained. But yes, I don't have them shown on the graphic, but that would also.
But they're protected by the easement?
Yes.
Okay, and I know that there was a question, Ms. Miller had brought up a question about trash enclosures as well, too. I do know that there's a number of other businesses in downtown Sioux Falls that are off of narrow alleyways where the contractor has small tractors or whatever they call them that actually pulls the bin out so that it's access to the larger truck. So I'm not sure if that's insurmountable, but whether there's an agreement, that would be something that would have to be worked out as well. It comes down to me whether this is valuable to the city, and I don't see the value of this property to the city, and the fact that there is a perpetual easement on the property already, allowing to ensure access as needed. I do believe that this is surplus property and that we can declare it as such. I don't believe that this is necessarily a part of the alley. I guess one other question that I do have, can anybody tell me what was in place prior to the Huey building? So we're going back 40 years, and how far did it extend to the east? Does anybody know that? Do we have any history buffs in here?
Colby went home.
Because is it possible that the building that existed prior to this extended back as far as the building that is being renovated now for a hotel? And I know that the building to the south of this site is relatively new too, so I'm not sure what was in there. And forgive me, I've lived here my entire life, but I don't remember that far.
Shoe shop, shoe repair shop.
Any other questions from the council?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor.
I guess I'm going to, before we vote here, I'm going to do my mental gymnastics to make this work. If the situation was reversed tonight and a development group was coming to us and the property owners adjacent were coming to us asking us to buy this piece of property to guarantee their access to the building to the north and to the south, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We would say there's no way, there's no public interest in the city purchasing this piece of land to move forward to guarantee that, I don't believe. And so the reverse of that is there isn't any need to continue that. I think that if we declare this surplus tonight, that hopefully the parties will get together and have a discussion, take care of, and come to an agreement so there isn't a court case. That's why we hire lawyers, not to file actions and go to court, but to settle their interests that can come together. And by surplusing this, it's going to force them to have a discussion that I hope will be mediated by the planning department and the city administration as well as we entertain selling this. If they come back to us later and say we're going to sell this piece of property and there isn't an agreement between the landowners as part of it, I don't believe I could support that. I don't think most of you could either as well. This tonight, by surplusing it, brings the parties to the table, and if they don't come to an agreement, we discuss that as part of the sale of this piece of property and the offer that we receive when we publish it and work with the real estate department. This just continues the process without stalling it longer. And I don't see how this is in the public need for this piece of property.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other statements? Councilor Sale.
The mental gymnastics that you
have referred to is sometimes taxing on me. I will say this, that I did hear somebody say that we did this once. This body, 1976, 78, whatever it was, we used this for what it was intended for. And then we should probably stand by that. And I just have an observation. It's not lost on me that most of the times when two attorneys disagree, that it's settled by a judge. I think that's why we have so many attorneys, because opinions can differ. So I personally, at this point, am not convinced it's surplus. And if that goes forward, I'm not convinced that we need to sell that. And I'm concerned about the ramifications of declaring it surplus, going through that process, and then not doing anything with it. Because this, I would suspect that if this is not done the way it's been presented, that there will be another plan coming forward by the owners of the building saying, well, we've amended our plan, we can do this now. Since you're not going to allow us to do this, we can still do plan B. At least I think that's the way most developers work. I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sale. Councilor Kiley.
Well, I would just like to say that I don't know that I've ever seen a plan for this building, and I'm not sure if anybody else has seen a plan for this building. We've heard about what we would like to have it discussed as far as how far they'd like to extend it back, but in terms of seeing plans, I have not seen that, and I think the city has done by making sure that there's a perpetual easement, that they are protecting the other parties that could be affected by this. And as far as this property being valuable to the city, what are we going to use it for? And is it the city's role to hang on to private party or a piece of property for the benefit of other private parties and no benefit to the city of Sioux Falls? Especially, and the reason I'm making that statement is because the easements are there and are in place. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Staley.
And just one more question. Who owns the alley? Mr. Cooper, maybe. So the green, okay, the green alley is owned by?
The city of Sioux Falls owns the alley.
The city of Sioux Falls. And they have the alley there for access purposes, correct?
Yeah, that alley is for access, right?
A one-way alley.
I'm not sure.
Well, it's a dead-end alley, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
I've got some questions.
Councilor Brecky, go ahead, please.
Question for Mike Cooper. What has changed from when it was originally given? What has changed factually that makes it no longer necessary, useful, and suitable in terms of its use?
The fact that I think the permanent easements have been placed on it. So that's still the use of it is for private access.
So the permanent easements were put on at a separate point, or wasn't that all done at once?
I think the 1980s, as Danny had talked about.
So the uses haven't changed, but permanent easements were placed on it.
Yes.
That's the only thing that's changed. Okay,
This property has not changed from when the original Huey building was constructed. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking what has changed. As best I know, it's still being used, for the purposes for which it was granted surplus and for which the perpetual easements were granted. So factually, nothing's changed. They're still using it for ingress and egress and all the purposes for which it was originally set out.
I'll have Danny, the original purpose was for development, and now there's easements that have been placed. But I'm getting into Danny's message here, so
That's good, because that was my next question.
Sure. So 1969, we adopted an urban renewal plan. And in that urban renewal plan, the plan was to purchase a great deal of real estate for development and other purposes in the downtown area. Part of this property was involved in that purchase. So the plan was, we're going to buy this property and the properties around it to encourage development. And so in 1969, that was the plan. So in 1975 and 1976, The property was purchased, which combined together makes this area that we're talking about today. And so in 75 and 76, we became the owners. In 1977, we replatted all those different legal descriptions to get to what we have here today. The yellow portion called out as an easement for alley, okay? And so then in 1985 is when we passed by resolution an easement saying this easement for alley is going to be for ingress and egress for the adjoining landowners to the north and to the south. That's the history on this property as I know it.
So the alley, and I note that a vehicle is going in there. I would, well, what about emergency vehicles? Maybe I don't know whether it's which of you, because we have the alley easement, I'm assuming that's for, and we're retaining that's for emergency vehicle access.
Yeah, in my review, that was never mentioned, but that might be something that was done for that particular reason, but I don't know that. And I don't know that emergency vehicles need that now or not, based on what's around there for hydrants, and you know, that would be the fire department answer, a question to answer. I don't know the answer to that, sorry.
Okay. I would just mention that, if I could maintain the floor, when I was there, a rather large truck came and tried to get in there. It was almost made to order viewing, and it made it pretty clear that if that alley was for emergency vehicles, it would be very difficult to get in there and maneuver and turn around without this property. So I do have that additional question and concern about whether it, with regard to what you said, Rick, whether there isn't some public purpose there.
I would like to add to,
because that along with where the construction easement was in the alley and the surplus, the property that you're asking us to declare surplus, did at that moment seem like there was a city purpose.
And what I'd also like to suggest, if you were going to surplus this property and then some proposal came to you that you were concerned about emergency access, while we still own the property, we could potentially put other easement conditions on that piece of property, which would benefit potentially us and the public at large. So there's other things you can do besides just benefiting the landowners to the north and south with the ability to place easements on property.
Councilor Neitzer.
Yeah, just a couple other observations. It seems like going forward, maybe we want to look at if we're going to be declaring property surplus as opposed to a police car, that maybe we should have a required public notice of at least abutting property owners. That might be something to think about based on what we saw. Because I will tell you that I thought everything was all good until literally 3 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon on that Tuesday. And that was because I got called by an attorney I know who's at the Cutler law firm and said, could you come on over here? And if I would have just said, well, I'm busy because I had an informational in an hour, this could have been a done deal, and we would have just voted it through, and nobody would have bothered to tell me that we had all of these people that were, these adjoining landowners that were concerned, and that's very concerning to me. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I do have concerns about whether the city knew that there were concerns and they didn't tell me about it. I'm not accusing anybody because I don't know. I'm just concerned about that. It almost seems like when I look at this yellow piece that, we should be voting on a motion for this right now, but it should be almost a motion to dedicate it as a public right-of-way. Almost seems it should be just part of an alley, that it is the alley. I mean, we certainly could. It seems to me there must be other alleys in town where the only people adjoining it are all private property owners, and so, but we still maintain it, so, would we argue that doesn't have a public use? I mean, I don't think so. So, anyway, I'll stop there. Just a couple other thoughts.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. I know that emergency vehicle access has been used as a reason to maintain this and why we shouldn't consider it a surplus. And believe me, I'm not making light of access for emergency vehicles. But if we were to apply that same standard, that this should be maintained for emergency vehicle access, then we would not have allowed the construction of the businesses on the opposite side of the river. And we have several, including a hotel that does not have an alley between it and the river. We have a number of large office complex that do not have an alleyway between them and the river. So it seems like if that's what you're going to apply, you're using a double standard then, because we haven't done it on the opposite side of the river. The emergency access would be available, obviously, to the front and to the sides, those that are on corners, to the side streets as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments? The motion on the table right now has been amended back to a motion to approve this, which essentially would declare it. We're back to square one, to the original. So declare this as surplus property. So that is the motion on the table, just to make sure. I know we've had a lot of lengthy conversation, debate, and great public input, and I thank you all for that. So I just want to make sure we all know what we're voting on. Is there any other comments? Otherwise, I will ask for a roll call vote on declaring this surplus property. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Staley?
No.
Councilmember Brecky?
No.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzert?
No.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
No.
Starr?
Yes.
That is tied 4-4. So that means that it fails for a lack of a majority. Item 47.
Item 47 is a resolution authorizing the City of Sioux Falls to gift shelving to Minnehaha County and the Parker Public Library.
Good evening, Jody Fick, Director of Siouxland Libraries. Next month, we're going to be replacing the shelving that is at the Ronning branch, bringing it to the current standards of how our shelving is done at all of our other branches. The shelving, a lot of the shelving is still useful, and we have moved some of it out to our Hartford branch, and we're moving some of it to the Brandon branch. But we have some shelving that we would like to gift to Minnehaha County for their archive building. This is, if you're at the Ronning branch, this is the shelving that is 90 inches tall. It is no longer useful to us in the public library world because it is too tall for patrons to access the materials on the top shelves. So it no longer meets accessibility standards. It will work for an archives because a lot of their stuff they store up higher. And so they are very interested in acquiring 40 sections of the shelving. And then some of the shelving that's in the children's area, we would like to gift to the Parker Public Library. In Siouxland Libraries, in our children's area, we have switched to a shelving that is easier for the children to browse through the collection. And it divides the 3-foot shelves up into smaller sections, which makes it easier for the children to pull the books out and put them back in without all of the books falling over. Parker is going to be using it in a different area, but it's no longer useful to us.
Thank you, Jody. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item? Council, any comments, motions?
Move to approve, Neitzert.
Second, Kylie.
There's been a motion to approve in a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
That motion passes 8-0. Item 48.
Item 48 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rescheduling the business of the city.
Welcome.
Tom Greco, City Clerk. This simply takes the meeting of October 16th, currently scheduled, and moves it to Monday the 15th, and the meeting of November 6th, and moves it to the Monday of November 5th. The purpose in October is due to the Chamber's annual meeting, and in November it's for travel for members of the council to the National League of Cities Conference. So I recommend approval.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, council?
Move to approve.
Second?
It's been a motion to approve in a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That passed 8-0. Next item.
Item 49 is a resolution supporting the candidacy of Michael Hall for a position on the Board of Directors of the South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance, SDPAA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would it be all right if I present from here?
Yes, you may.
Karen Leonard, Acting City Attorney. Michael Hall is currently our city's risk manager, and he serves on the South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance Board. He is seeking re-election on that board again and is seeking your permission to run for his candidacy on the board.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Statements or
Madam Chair.
motions? Yes, Councilor.
Maybe a question for the acting city attorney. On this board, will there be an opening with former Director Turbeck's position? I know he's finishing his year as president till the annual convention. So will that open, or will he continue to serve as well?
I can find out his term on the board and get back to you if that would be all right. I don't know the status of his position.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, motions? Councilor Kylie.
Counselor, were you suggesting that Mr. Hall would then have 2 votes? No. Actually, I support this. Mr. Hall is a very knowledgeable individual in this area, serves the city well, and having one of our members serve as on the board of directors for the South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance is a value to the city.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
That item passes 8-0. Item 50.
Item 50 is a report of the July 18, 2018 Notice of Transfer of Appropriations within major organizational units.
Is there anyone that would like to address the council on this? Seeing none, is there any additional new business? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned.